Hey everybody, this is Perch. I say this with some amusement. The what if Miles Morales became Thor? This is labeled as issue number 4 for reasons that are probably best known only to Marvel, but this is part of the what if Miles Morales becomes something that other than Spider-Man. And I've done videos in the past around why Marvel messing around with Miles Morales is a bad idea. And the fact that, they actually have a kind of a seed of a good character there. They had the Into the Spider Verse. I think they managed to almost get many of the people there around the fact that this is Spider Man, Miles Morales' version of Spider Man, but a different Spider Man. So not Peter Parker, but a different kind. I think the Into the Spider Verse movie did a reasonable job of kind of trying to explain how this character was different. And I think they build the character well and put the character out. So what does Marvel do? Of course, they say, hey, what if he was Wolverine and the Hulk and the Thor? Now, why in the world Marvel would think this was a good plan to help kind of sell books and promote Miles Morales is a fascinating idea that I'm sure somebody could do an amazing job of explaining at some point. But regardless of all that, the comics are painful, in many cases, painfully bad. And they're all bad in different ways, just how they're put out and kind of what they've done. But what's weird is it's this fourth issue of this what if Miles Morales was something other than he was, which, by the way, if you're a comic publisher and you're thinking, how do we, get around the controversy and criticism that Miles Morales is not Spider Man? I know the best way to do it is to prove that Miles Morales is also all the other characters of the Marvel Universe would not be my first pick. At any rate, people largely went along with / ignored Miles Morales in these other comics, Wolverine and the Hulk and other things. And but on the fourth issue, we got What If Miles Morales Became Thor by writer Yudi Mercado, artist Luigi Zagaria. And What If Miles Morales Became Thor has suddenly, remarkably, pissed everybody off. Now, why? Why has it pissed everyone off? Well, the answer is because it sounds like the comic comes across as racist. Okay, why? Well, the answer is Miles Morales is hanging around this Asgard in this what if story, and Asgard is drawn and kind of rendered as the hood. In fact, it's called that. In all the 5 realms, Asgard is his hood. They've got shoes hanging from a wire for some reason. Why that wire exists, I mean, they don't need electricity in the same way, nobody knows. The Asgard is filled with graffiti. The Sif is like hot wings coming in hot, and that's how she's described. Uncle Loki is just all parts of this are goofy, including the hammer of Thor has is littered with graffiti as well. And for whatever reason, we've gone through several Miles Morales is something else. They decided that this one is one bridge too far. It's racist. It's categorizing bad things and everything else. The story itself is pretty non-significant. Miles Morales goes against a bunch of frost giants. He's briefly detained. He gets away. Uncle Loki is up to shenanigans, and there's nothing really to this. Thor is able to be victorious. He tells Loki, I know you don't mean this. And at the very end, he gets to kind of team up with himself. Miles is Wolverine, Miles is Hulk, Miles is Captain America. And this is, we're apparently going to get a What If Miles Morales was everything teamed up with himself as other Miles Morales characters. And this is stupid. Make no mistake about it. This is just dumb. But it is fascinating watching the people complain about it who are saying, well, this is what you get when you get a non-person of color. Now, for what it's worth, if we're really going to say this is a non-person of color here, okay, so Yudi Mercado is not white. So if you want to really create that argument that the problem here is that you didn't have a person of color writing this story, and therefore it came across as stereotypical and kind of crappy. And make no mistake about it, it is stereotypical and it is crappy. But so are the other What If books with Miles Morales. It's not new. Maybe it's slightly more egregious in this particular book, but they're all bad. I mean, all these things are bad ideas. I think Miles Morales as a character is interesting. I think Miles has had a pretty heavy burden he's had to carry as being a kind of a legacy version of Peter Parker, a Spider-Man, and he's got to forge his own way. And I think the writers, at times have done a good job and at times have done a bad job of kind of identifying him as his own character. But, to kind of settle here at the end and determine that, this comic is worse somehow than the others, not really. They're all bad. This one does a lousier job, but to blame this as, and that's the big kind of outrage that's going on here, is that this comic, because it wasn't written by a black person, it's somehow worse than if it was. But having seen other Miles comics, other What If comics written by black people, it's not better. Those other books were just as equally offensive. It's just you had a different writer on it. In this case, you have this writer, who again not white, but I suppose not black, and it's just to me it's a tipping point. But if you go back and you read those other What If books, they're all bad. I mean, this was a terrible idea on Marvel's part. So, what it goes back to the why, and right now a lot of people are getting outraged and pissed. There's a bunch of trending topics on Twitter calling this a racist comic, and Marvel is treating Miles poorly, and this is what you get when you have corporations who are trying to write things for black people. I mean, be that as it may, my bigger question is, what are you trying to do with Miles as a comic? Now, I'm not a big fan of Saladin Ahmed's work, but when you pick up the Miles Morales comic, right now he's been pushed into an alternate universe where the evil clone of himself has taken over Brooklyn. And the challenge with all this is, at what point do we get the Spider-Man adventure like we saw in the movie, the Into the Spider-Verse movie? At what point do we get Miles Morales just being Miles, doing something entertaining, doing something exciting, getting people of all races to get excited about what they're going with that character? It feels like they keep, dodging that in favor of things that, it's questionable. Who wants this? To see this big controversy and outrage over, well, this is a bridge too far. Now we've got graffiti on the hammer Thor, and somehow this is more offensive than, what they did with Wolverine or Captain America. It's like, at the end of the day, the only way to solve any of this is that when you have Miles, let him be himself. Let him be his own character. Let him kind of carry the book on his own. I mean, absolutely the stupidest thing to do would be to say, hey, in response to criticism that he's just stealing other people's roles, let's do a What If series where he's literally all the characters in the Marvel Universe. Why would you do that? It's a terrible, stupid idea. It doesn't help him get over. It doesn't help argue against the criticism of what they're doing here. All it does is just continue to perpetuate this feeling like the writers at Marvel and the people in charge are trolling. And at the end and that's what it does feel like. It feels like this is a stunt from Marvel writing and Marvel editorial to say, hey, we heard, we saw these complaints that Miles Morales is taking somebody else's identity. So in order to get those guys back real good, we're going to give him all the identities. And the result is what you have here, where not only are, one group angry about it or saying they won't buy it, but now you have the other group angry about it because you wrote the comic in such a stereotypical, stupid way that's what you have. And for the people who are really going aggressive at Yuri Mercado, and there are a lot of people who are saying pretty nasty, pretty aggressive things at him, please do remember that somewhere along the line, this comic got, pitched, solicited, and approved. It's not like Yudi came up out of nowhere and said, here's a comic and you have to publish it. No, if we go further down on the credits, we get to Tom Groman, the editor, Nick Lowe, the supervising editor, and C.B. Cebulski, editor-in-chief, and somewhere in there, I suppose, Tom Brevoort. Yeah, those guys all signed off on this. So, I mean, it's weird to me on Twitter to see people carrying torches to go storm the castle and burn down Yudi Mercado when it went through at least 3 to 4 layers of approvals before it went out the door. All white guys. Well, maybe not C.B. Cebulski, by the way, but, the rest of them, all white guys. So how did that happen? How did this comic get made? Anyway, it's weird for me to see. It's weird for me to see the backlash, but I don't know. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.